Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Resilience Pod. You're here with me, your host, Reena Singh. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am truly grateful. Guys, in this ever changing, dynamic world, organizations and its employees are consistently required to be alert, agile, and adaptable. Essentially, a resilient business relies on resilient people. We are still in this pandemic, no doubt, 4 or 5 weeks in. Those of us who are in the resilience field has helped our organizations by now enact all the plans. We have hopefully enabled all critical activities to be underway where reasonably possible. Everybody is working from home where they can. But what about the people element of this response? Have you guys, as resilience professionals, been speaking to your HR as part of the response? Has anything changed on that part? What about the policies? Has anyone been ill? Has the policies around that been changed? Guys, we are talking about exactly this and the importance of HR and resilience professionals in a pandemic. The collaboration is absolutely crucial, and we are going to delve further into this with my next guest on the pod who works with businesses and individuals to create personal resilience strategies and helps navigate planned and unplanned changes to the workplace and home. So, very relevant to this chat. He has over 15 years' experience in resilience across an array of sectors. He truly understands personal resilience. Now, the reason why I say that, guys, is that he spent 10 years previously in the London Ambulance Service working as a paramedic. Fun fact also, he walked, not worked, 400 miles to the magnetic North Pole. Crazy, right? So he truly understands and demonstrates personal resilience. Guys, please join me in welcoming my next guest on the Resilience Pod, transformational coach and founder of the Resilience Company, James Trotman. Hi,
Hi,
James.
Irina. Thanks very much for having me.
No problem. How are you today?
I'm really good. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thank you for joining us on the pod in this very strange time that we are living in.
Indeed. Yes. Very strange.
It's very strange. And we are, as my introduction alluded to, we are here to talk about the people element of this because it's really important, and human resources, HR, and the resilience professional.
That's
Now, yeah, I wonder if people have actually thought about the importance of this. In your view, have they?
well. I would hope they had, but in my experience, the sort of the people aspect tends to be looked at from quite a high strategic level. And
Mm,
I really do think that there's a lot of the personal and specific individuality bit missing from it, especially when it comes to your really key individuals who are helping to
mhm,
run your critical activities once you've enacted your plan. Um,
mhm,
and what happens to them if they fall over and burn out,
mm,
or catch COVID-19, as could happen.
mhm,
So yeah, what I'm interested in is looking more at the individual rather than the loss of people as a whole.
mhm,
It's looking at the loss of key people and how you can support them as best you can going through any emergency. And
mm,
as we all know in this game, that so often the actual resilience of the responders is not really thought about necessarily,
mhm,
and you then get to the point where everyone just falls over because they've been doing 16-hour days for 2 weeks, and there's no one to back them up. So it's looking
mhm.
at how you can strengthen your people to strengthen your response ultimately.
Yeah, and it's so prevalent in this time now. And generally, these are kind of proactive measures that we would hope our organizations are taking before an incident happens. Forget a pandemic, just generally. Uh, but in this time, resilience professionals should be talking to their HR and seeing if they need to alter their policies. What's your view on that? Do policies need to be altered?
Well, again, it's going to very much depend on your organisation. I don't know if policies being altered in a time of such massive crisis is the way to do it. I think having an agile ability to actually change quickly and react. Although they should have been proactive and pre-planned, obviously,
Yeah.
there will be a lot of reaction because this is so unprecedented, and most plans will probably have fallen over at the first hurdle, I imagine, and then there'll have had to have been some very hasty sort of rewrites and modifications as we've gone through. So yeah, it's I'm not a fan of policies and bureaucracy. I think the organisations that can then quickly change and recognise where change is required are the ones that are going to fare better than those that have to go through a lengthy papers for the board, policy decision, up and down, and all that sort of stuff, which can really slow down and hinder, even in a business as usual scenario. That sort of way of doing business can be so slow and sort of lumbering. So for me, it's more about the recognition that the people are individuals as well.
Okay.
So there's lots of blanket well-being programs that companies will have, and they'll offer, maybe an app or an online service, an employee assistance program, for example. But I think in these situations, when there's high pressure, completely new situation that we find ourselves in, it's really key to get individual programs in place that focus on different people's way of being, because not
Okay.
everyone reacts in the same way to
Mm.
these situations.
And how can we actually practically do this? What would be some of your
Yeah,
suggestions?
it's a great question. So the best way to do it is to actually sit down with the people or have a talk with them and do baseline tests as to what their values are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how they are at the moment. On a scale of 1 to 10, how is your mental health? Something as simple as that is a really powerful indicator of how well your people are doing. But also having the openness to allow people to say that without the fear of any sort of repercussions later down the line, or sort of views of weakness that can sometimes stop people from wanting to speak up like that. But yeah, it's about putting in programs that are bespoke to individuals. So some people might work best sort of sitting in on a couple of hours of a webinar, a workshop on different strategies that could be used. Others might benefit from a group program, which is more sort of blended. So webinars, online learning, and individual coaching sessions. And other people might just focus on one-on-one, really focused individual coaching to help them through. So yeah, I tend to work depending on the organisation and the individual. It will be a combination of those three, but completely bespoke to whatever that organisation and those people need.
Yeah, absolutely. And if organizations don't have, the ability at the moment to say hire someone like you who could to provide that coaching, what can line managers do to help deal with this for their staff?
Yeah, I'd say the key thing is just talking to your staff and engaging with them all the time, checking in.
Mm,
Because again, some people will be used to working at home, others not so much. And those that are used to working at home and doing video calls and just getting on with it, probably, although they may have issues working at home.
mhm,
But those who don't normally work from home are going to find this very, very different, and they're not going to have that support mechanism around them that they normally do. And so it's just keeping an eye on your people. And there's loads of great information out there from people like Mind. There's lots of great websites that can give you hints and tips on how to sort of boost your personal resilience. One of my other favorite tips is looking at your own sphere of influence. So, we can't change the situation we're in. So
mhm,
don't get too involved in over-analyzing it. You've just got to be
mhm,
in that situation and sort of work out what's going to work for you. There's nothing you can do to sort of change what's happening, but there are things you
mhm.
can do to change your mindset and the way you think about things to make life easier, essentially.
Mhm. I love that. That's absolutely true. It's reflecting inwards and looking at your mindset. Now, a lot of staff, and people don't really think about these things.
Mm,
So I've got two questions for you, in two parts. One, how do we get them to start thinking about this currently, because we are in a global pandemic?
yeah.
And then following on from that, then how do we then embed this so it's not seen as a stigma? Because you alluded to earlier that, people don't want to talk about, oh, I'm not feeling great today, or, this is really getting down to me. What do organizations need to do to change this going forward?
Yeah, so I'll address the second question first, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah.
And I think, we've probably seen in the last few years, there's been an absolutely huge increase in media attention and focus and acceptance of mental health issues.
Mm,
Prince Harry, Greg James from Radio 1, all these sort of celebrities and people in the public eye have really started speaking about it and getting it out there
mm,
and normalizing it, which is brilliant. And plenty of organisations are doing their bit about reducing that stigma. But I think in
mhm,
certain industries and certain organisations, there probably still is a fear that you'll be
mm,
seen as the weak link in the team if you sort of say I'm struggling here. And it's about just changing the cultures, which is obviously the hardest thing to do in any organisation, and that has to come
mhm,
from the top. So it's got to be
mhm,
driven from the board and the CEO. And that's not happening, you're going to struggle to embed that no matter what level you're at. Um, so yeah,
mhm,
it's about the culture really, and
mm.
keeping touch with the culture of the country, because that's the way we're going. We're becoming more
Yes.
accepting of it. And if those organisations don't keep up with that, then they're going to
Mm,
lose good people because they're not going to feel supported.
mhm. That's really good. Now, what about currently? We're in this situation. What can we start doing?
Yeah,
If we're
so
not, yeah,
just sort of simple stuff around like I've been practicing mindfulness for a couple of years now, and
okay,
when I first heard about it, I was massively skeptical, as I'm sure a lot of people are, and it does have connotations of being a bit sort of new world and a bit weird. But again, I think over the last few years, it's really come to the fore, and it's normalised now that being present and being mindful is so powerful, um,
mhm,
and not sort of attaching yourself to past and future events, because as soon as you start doing that, you get lost in them and your ego comes in and you fight
mhm,
with where you want to be and what you want to do or what you have done. So yeah, if you can ground yourself in the present moment, even the power of breathing is immense. Before we started this conversation, I just took 3 deep breaths just to sort of, block everything else out, calm myself,
yeah,
just clear my mind a bit. And it's amazing how powerful that can be. So yeah,
mm,
mindfulness is obviously everywhere, and that's brilliant. But other hints and tips are things like just making sure that you've got good social networks. So I mentioned
mhm,
earlier around the managers checking in, but check in on
mm,
your colleagues and have, like, instead of a Zoom meeting, because everyone's having millions of them at the moment, and I'm sure are getting very bored of them, have a Zoom
yeah,
have a Zoom coffee party or something. Or as one of my friends who's a commercial director of a massive supermarket chain in the Emirates, he was running their board meeting wearing a
mm.
sombrero. And the CEO and a couple of the other board members were in Hawaiian shirts. It was just like a party. They were just doing it to sort of keep that sort of energy up and keep it light,
Mm,
and just sort of, yeah, socialize at the same time as getting on with what you can do. Um,
mm,
so yeah, there's loads of great stuff out there, but I think for me,
yeah,
social networks, grounding yourself and understanding yourself as well is so key,
yeah,
and just doing a little bit of work on self awareness and what are
mm.
your triggers and what keeps you going and what sort of might send you over the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the human element after all, which I
Yes.
and I really like that story of in the boardroom and the CEO, because it's about the realness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it is. However, with that, when we are planning, so we've looked at we touched on personal resilience and how to cope with it, but when as resilience professionals, when we're planning for our critical staff and we're looking at contingent workforce, To be honest, a lot of people probably don't think about the well-being side of it in
Mm,
planning,
yeah,
because you assume that it's already there and you think, oh yeah, they've got the EAP, the Employee Assistance
yeah,
Program. Um, but in this specific time, people are critical workers. Now, I'm not just referring to, those on, doing, running the trains at the moment to get people there, the doctors and nurses, not those, but in organizations, there are critical workers
yeah.
who are helping the business carry on. Now, that mental kind of load on them must be immense.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're probably doing different work or more work to what they're used to. So there's a change, from, well, there's so much going on, isn't there? That you've got the crazy situation, global situation that we're in. You've got the fact
Mhm.
that you're probably working from home, and not just for the odd day here and there. If you've got a family, they're going to be at home with you, and that is a challenge in itself. I have a 1 year old, and my God, when my wife had to go out shopping the other day, I got zero work done. And it's
Yeah.
just, there's not the it someone said the other day, we're not working from home, we're at
Mm.
home doing our best to work, which I loved. I can't remember where I saw that,
Yes.
but it just really hit home that this isn't normal what we're doing. This is not normal. We're doing our best to do what we can in a very
Yeah.
odd situation, and different people will cope with that in different ways.
They will. And I think as resilience professionals, we need to be aware of
Yeah,
this, and we need to start looking at where we're working, not for ourselves personally, but those of our colleagues who are doing these critical essential activities, and thinking, what are we as a business offering them
yeah,
in terms of support now? And that goes back to how like linking to your HR business partner, whoever in your company is looking after that element with the resilience professional. And I've never really seen that strong link
no,
before.
no.
How important is that?
Well, I think it's really important because, like I mentioned at the beginning, normally the sort of links with HR will be around that they'll be sitting around a table, you'd hope, at a sort
Yeah,
of response group meeting or whatever. But
yeah,
it's not necessarily looking at the individuals, the people. It's looking at HR as a whole strategic element of an organization. And I know as business continuity and resilience professionals, we probably don't look at the individuals either, unless we're sort of talking about the CEO or or
hmm,
the chief operating officer. Everyone else sort of gets lumped together in people, like, oh, well, how are you
yeah,
gonna, what's your plan for dealing with the loss of people? It's like, well,
mm,
okay, that's a very broad brush, a loss of
hmm,
people. It
mm,
depends on those people that you lose, what
mm,
your response is going to be. In my view, anyway, we should be getting a lot more specific and a lot more. How can we help these people? There's nothing we can do about losing a key manager or a leader to COVID, for example, and then
mm,
being out of the loop for several
mm,
weeks. It seems like to recover.
mm,
But there is something we can do to support them in the role that
mhm,
they find themselves in now,
mm,
and the deputies that might step into their shoes if they do get taken out,
yes.
then
Mm,
making sure that they are prepared and aware and as
mm.
resilient as they can be is really key, I think.
Absolutely. And I guess to further add on to your points is to make sure that we're thinking about the worst case as well.
Yeah,
And as resilience professionals, we're good at thinking about that because that's our job.
yeah,
But in this situation, if there is a death in service, that we've considered that.
yeah, absolutely. And we've sort of I think a lot of us have just been looking at the numbers recently, haven't we, on the
Mhm,
news? And it's not until I saw a poor lady the other day lost her father on the news, and she was just explaining how everyone is just, oh, it's just lots of numbers at the moment, but then suddenly it comes very, very close to home and it becomes very,
mm,
very real. And I've had a couple of
mhm,
friends hospitalised. Luckily, they've been okay. But and you suddenly think, oh God, this is like a 40-year-old guy who's fit and healthy, and he's been
mm,
properly taken out.
mhm,
So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to think around that, and how you deal with that, and how you're going to get that message out in a compassionate and um, and kind way, I guess. And
Absolutely.
understanding that sort of news will impact your staff and impact their
Mhm.
ability to do what they're doing.
Mhm. Yeah, and just it's the immediate impact and effect, and then the longer term as well. So
Yeah,
how are the team going to get over it?
yeah,
It doesn't. It's not going to go away with the click of a finger. So I think
no,
it's really, really important, and I think it's really great that we're having this conversation and just bringing the obvious to light because,
yeah.
guys, we know this, don't we?
And no
Um,
one wants to talk about death, but it's happening all around us, unfortunately, at the moment.
yeah.
So you've got to address it, or it'll creep
Mhm.
up on you, and you won't be prepared. So, yeah,
Yeah.
having that sort of comms and that sort of I guess it's like the recovery phase, isn't it? So
Yes.
I was involved in the recovery phase from the Shoreham air crash,
Mm.
and the main body of that was the community and the resilience of the community, really, and
Mhm.
engaging with people and making sure what you were doing gelled with what your community wanted and what they were feeling at the time. So don't
Mm.
just go off what you think is the right thing to do. Have a chat with people quietly if necessary and really work out what the mood is and what people would be wanting from that. Would they want a full memorial, full sort of, all bells and
Mm.
whistles, or would they just want to deal with it quietly on their own? And again, everyone's going to be different.
Yeah, it's asking the right questions and
Yeah,
having those conversations
absolutely.
in the first place. I think just hearing all this and just reflecting on just being in this situation from a day job perspective as well, we've probably got better relationships with our HR people than ever before.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's really important to capitalize on it. And
Mm,
we've done the morbid bit just then, but actually the positives
yeah.
are our star is in the ascent as resilience professionals at the moment. As we all know, when there's a
Yeah.
disaster, we are the golden people,
Mm,
and people look to us for the answers, and the
mhm,
sort of um, and the CEOs sort of want us at their right hand side, telling them what
mhm,
they should be doing. And I think it's really important now more than ever to capitalize on that capital that you have within your organizations. Because, and I hate to say this, but having seen it happen, and I hope it's different this time, you
mhm.
watch like a couple of years down the line from a big event, a big incident, and memory fades pretty quickly.
Yes.
I really hope it's different this time because it's such a massive global impact. I
Mhm.
really hope there's lots of positives that do come out of this weird situation.
Yeah.
But the cynic in me says it might not. So while we're still sort of in the spotlight, as it were, it's really time to build those relationships within your business, break those silos down, which we're also familiar with, I'm sure, and
Mhm.
do a whacking great load of stakeholder engagement and make really good sort of friends and allies, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that because just talking about a personal experience recently, I've been talking to my HR a lot more than I would have because
Yeah,
all these different scenarios have come up.
that's
And,
it.
what do you do about new staff, who can't get a laptop?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, those kind of things is like, well, I would never really think about asking HR those kind of things, and it wouldn't really normally fall under certain resilience professionals' jobs. But you're having all these random conversations with different parts of the business, not just HR, because I know we're focusing on that right now, but it's helping bridge that gap because of that we're in this together.
Yes,
So
yeah,
let's find a solution. I really like that, and the silo breaking down. So
yeah.
I think, would you agree that, okay, I know you were a bit cynical earlier, but we could use this as a remember when this happened, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, because it impacted me in such a different way than anything
Yeah,
else. Would
I really do think that this is going to be different this time because of the size of the impact and not just
mm,
focused on individual businesses or individual people. It's global. Every single person on the
mm,
planet probably in some way has been affected, whether it's you know it's supply chain, it's going to be loss of people. Shutting your premises is like it's huge. So I really do hope that so much positive stuff comes out of this. And you already see the way we're working differently, and there's lots of sort of thought leadership going on around how we're going to work differently in the future because of where we find ourselves now. So yeah, I'm keeping my fingers firmly crossed.
Indeed, I think that yes, we all are, and I absolutely echo that. That I think and strongly believe that the collaboration is going to get much better
Yeah,
between resilience professionals and all the other areas, not just HR, but I think HR more so because we need to, just from what you've said, in the last 25 minutes, is that we need to start thinking about the person behind that critical
yeah,
role
yeah,
and the well-being side of it. So I think it's hoping and a message out to our listeners that go, if you don't know what's going on in that aspect in your organizations, now is the perfect time to ask
yeah,
those questions.
definitely.
So yeah, thank you for your insights on that. I think it's really helped opened our view in this, which is really great.
Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about, and I've become more and more passionate about it.
Yeah.
As I've also seen more companies really grasping the sort of the people side of things
Mhm.
instead of there used to be hard HR, and there still is a bit around of that,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
was basically just there for disciplinaries and sickness records.
Mm.
But I think HR has evolved hugely. Certainly, I've seen it in businesses that I've worked in with.
Mhm.
It's much more coming around to that holistic. People are really our greatest asset. A lot of that can still be sort of lip service to it, but I genuinely think there is a huge surge in really looking after your people because you invest a lot in them. You don't want them to fall
Mhm.
over, and you don't want them to leave if you're hammering them and they're not resilient to be able to do what you want them to do. So it's so important.
Fabulous. Thank you. I think that ends us nicely. That a powerful statement there from you, James. Thank you so much for just giving us this insight.
No, my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been great fun. Really enjoyed it.
No problem at all. It's our pleasure. Now, guys, if people want to take this conversation further, because I know we can't cover everything in half an hour, and where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so I'm LinkedIn. I'm James Trotman on LinkedIn. Look me up, or you can find my business site, which is theresiliencecompany.co.uk. And if you
Okay.
go onto the homepage there, there's a little button that says "Free Guide to Personal Resilience," and that'll give you 10 essential strategies, some of which we talked about today, that will just help people to think slightly differently about things and what's going on around them, and hopefully make them a bit more resilient.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much, James. Thank you guys for listening and tuning in today. Do visit the website if you want that free download. And obviously, I'll have it up on the resiliencepod.com site as well. Guys, we are still in this pandemic. It's crazy. However, as I mentioned before, a resilient business relies on resilient people. So, guys, if you haven't spoken to your HR side till now, go and speak to them. It will be beneficial. So, that's it from me, guys, your host, Reena Singh. Until next time, keep on investing in your resilience.